In the wake of Thursday's school shooting at an Oregon Community College, Democratic presidential frontrunner Hillary Clinton called for new gun control measures, saying the violence is, quote, beyond comprehension. As more candidates weigh in on the debate over gun rights, we're joined by CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris and Sam Frizell. He's a political reporter for Time magazine. Thanks for being here, guys.
Good to be with you.
Steve, let me go to you first. We've seen this happen time and time again. A lot of candidates are speaking out about this. Obviously, the president, a lot of people saying they've never seen him as angry as he was yesterday in his comments about what happened at this school in Oregon. But a lot of other people say, look, if nothing changed after 20 little kids were gunned down in Sandy Hook, this is probably not going to be anything that will change the issue either.
It makes you wonder, right? I mean, you would think that would have been the impetus for something to get done, and nothing got done. And so, you see the president out there looking, exhausted, having to come out and talk about this repeatedly. And then you hear the candidates who are really just sort of digging their heels in on this, and there's not really you don't see where the room to compromise is. You hear the Democrats calling for more gun control, and you hear the Republicans really trying to divert attention away from gun control and the Second Amendment and try to focus this on how this is a mental illness situation, and we've got to deal with the mental illness part of this. And so that's what you hear after every one of these shootings, it seems, and you wonder what's going to happen moving forward in Washington, and right now it doesn't seem like there's a real answer there.
Sam, as Steve points out, Republicans are digging their heels in, but one thing I've noticed in the last couple of years, but even more recently, as we've started to see these almost on a monthly basis, there are some Democrats that used to not want to talk about the gun control issue because it was radioactive. But now, like Hillary Clinton, but others, they're coming out and saying we need to change something. Are we at least seeing a shift when it comes to Democrats addressing this head on?
I think definitely on the presidential level you're seeing that. I mean, Hillary Clinton's comments yesterday after the shooting and today are basically as strong as they come. I think one of the interesting dynamics in the presidential race, though, is you see a difference between sort of her rhetoric and Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, of course, comes from a very prominent sort of hunting state, Vermont. And so I think that you see a sort of different way in which they talk about gun violence and the way to address it. Both are in favor of gun control, but to sort of different extents. And that's one of the divides you're seeing in the Democratic primary right now. I agree with Steve's assessment about sort of the difference between Republicans and Democrats, but I think within the Democratic field there's more nuance.
Steve, Governor Mike Huckabee came out yesterday and said that the president shouldn't be politicizing this, but then the president said, this is something that needs to be politicized. What are people in Washington saying?
Well, again, I think that the people in Washington are resigned to the fact that, as you said earlier, with that, if nothing happened after Newtown, when this involved 6- and 7-year-old kids, what is going to change? Are we in a situation where this is just an issue that's just not going to be resolved? We've seen these mass shootings happen over and over again, and the question is anything going to happen legislatively? It doesn't seem like the way Washington is set up right now that that's the case.
And let's turn to another issue, Steve, fundraising. Rand Paul was expected to be a heavyweight in this election cycle, yet he's only pulling in about $2.5 million last quarter. He's also polling in the low single digits. So what is he doing wrong?
Well, I think you look at him as a candidate, and he just hasn't clicked with the folks that we thought he was going to click with. When he got into this race, we all assumed he was going to have his father's foundation, Ron Paul, who was big among the Tea Party and libertarian types, and raised hand over fist millions of dollars in his 2 presidential campaigns. That hasn't materialized for Rand Paul because he really hasn't appealed to that crowd. He's taken positions that haven't been really in line with what libertarians and Tea Party folks seem to think. I think he's tried to broaden out beyond that, and it really hasn't worked out for him. And what you're seeing is sort of a little similar to what happened to Scott Walker. He got in with a lot of fanfare, but as the course of the campaign has gone on, he just hasn't found that spark among the Republican electorate at this point, and there's really no money there for him right now, and in the polls you're seeing him sink.
Let's stay with the numbers game here, Sam. Steve has been pounding the table about this, how interesting this is. I haven't seen a lot of this reported widely, but Hillary Clinton's campaign reportedly raised about $28 million. Now, Bernie Sanders is not far behind with $26 million, and he is not running the type the big operation with the high overhead that the Clinton campaign is running, he is not far behind, and he's doing it with these small donations.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fascinating dynamics that has come out this week. We always knew that Bernie Sanders was raising a lot of money from sort of small contributions. He is, at this point in the race, he has twice as many individual contributors as Barack Obama did in October of 2007 when Barack Obama was running in the Democratic primary. So that's a number that you'll see the Bernie Sanders campaign point to. And as far as his comparison with Hillary Clinton, I mean, being just $2 million shy of her number when he's doing most of his fundraising online, small dollar, his average donation is $30, is an important dynamic, and I think it's something that he's going to continue to tout on the campaign trail. I mean, it's part of his narrative, his political revolution.
Steve, we were talking about this before we came into this segment, Sam and I. Are we seeing sort of a Barack Obama model here with the Sanders campaign? It worked for the president back when he was running as a candidate, and it could work for Bernie Sanders?
I mean, in one sense, yes, in terms of the small donations. I mean, of course, Barack Obama also had bundlers and people raising the top dollar for him. But in the small donations part of this, he's actually doing better. His pace in terms of getting the number of small donors to his campaign is faster than what President Obama did. And that might be because it's Bernie Sanders, but it also might be because it's actually easier to, donate online than it was in 07 or 08. But still, it is reminiscent of Obama. I think what's really interesting here to me, though, is this is a guy, and I don't know what this says about Hillary Clinton, but this is a guy who I think in any other year would be considered a fringe candidate. And he is now matched Hillary Clinton in fundraising, at least in the third quarter. And I don't know if that just says that Democrats are that desperate for an alternative to Hillary Clinton, or there's just that lack of enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton, or what it says. But there's something going on with Bernie Sanders here that is just really interesting to watch. This was not the way the script was supposed to play out for Hillary Clinton, especially with a guy like Bernie Sanders.
And before I let either of you go, I just got to ask a question about Trump. His numbers have been weakening of late. Carly Fiorina is getting up there with him. Dr. Ben Carson is getting up there with him. Is he going to change strategy? He's been a little nicer, although his tweet feed, it's funny, I follow his Twitter feed and I get notifications. He's the only candidate running for president I get notifications because he's always tweeting. So on Twitter, he's still kind of rough around the edges, but it seems like on TV, he's gotten a little softer.
I'm not sure if his sort of tone is going to change. One of the difficult things with Trump is that one of his primary campaign strategies is to tout his poll numbers.
Yeah.
So if his poll numbers start tanking, he loses a kind of fundamental plank in his talking points. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, he's still leading the fields. He's still doing quite well and better than anybody in D.C. I think expected him to do. But we'll have to see how it plays out as far as talking about his poll numbers.
To be continued. Sam Frizell of Time Magazine and senior political editor Steve Chaggaris, thank you both for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vlad.
Thanks much.